A ship that physically could not sink was found half submerged and abandoned in the middle of the Pacific. 25 people were gone, and the official report explaining what happened was rewritten 3 times before anyone was allowed to read it. October 1955. The MV Joyita departs Apia, Western Samoa, bound for the Tokelau Islands. A routine cargo and passenger run. 37 hours, maybe 40. The kind of crossing done dozens of times a year across that stretch of South Pacific water. It never arrived. For 5 weeks, no distress signal, no wreckage, no bodies, nothing. Then a passing merchant vessel spotted something strange drifting roughly 600 miles off course. It was the Joyita, listing hard to port, partially flooded, and completely deserted. What they found on that deck is what makes this case impossible to dismiss as a simple maritime accident. Blood-stained bandages and surgical equipment were scattered across the cabin, not stored, not organized, but used and discarded in apparent urgency. The radio was tuned to the international distress frequency, 2182 kilohertz, but it had been transmitting on a faulty, makeshift circuit for years, its effective range barely 2 or 3 miles. Someone tried to call for help and almost certainly failed. The navigation lights were on. The log was missing. 4 tons of cargo had been removed from the hold. Here's the detail they never adequately explain. The Joyita was constructed with enough cork lining in its walls that maritime engineers consistently described the vessel as virtually unsinkable. Captain Thomas Henry Miller, an experienced mariner who knew the ship well enough to have lived aboard her for years, had reportedly told people more than once that he would rather go down with the Joyita than abandon her, precisely because she could not be sunk. Whatever drove 25 people off that vessel, it was not the fear of drowning. Something else happened on that water, something violent enough to produce bandages soaked in blood and urgent enough that they left behind a ship that would have kept them alive indefinitely. The British colonial administration in Fiji launched an inquiry almost immediately. That inquiry produced a report, then that report was revised. Then it was revised again. By the time a version reached public record, it had been rewritten 3 times, and each iteration softened what the previous one had suggested. The word piracy appeared in early internal correspondence, and then quietly disappeared. A formal finding of misadventure was eventually issued, a conclusion so deliberately vague it functioned less like an answer and more like a door being closed. Investigators who pushed for a more complete accounting were told the matter was resolved. It was not resolved. It has never been resolved. The Joyita departed Apia, Western Samoa, on October 2, 1955, bound for Fakakofo in the Tokelau Islands. A routine supply run. 25 people aboard, including crew, passengers, a doctor, and a government official. She never arrived. 5 weeks later, on November 10th, she was found drifting 600 miles off course, listing heavily to port, partially flooded and completely empty. No bodies, no passengers, no crew. Just the ship still afloat, as if everyone had simply stepped off into open ocean. Here is the first thing they did not want examined too closely. The Joyita was constructed with a cork-lined hull. Her builder had designed her to be unsinkable under virtually any condition. Investigators confirmed she could not have gone down even in the state she was found. Whatever happened on that vessel, the 25 people aboard had no reason to abandon ship. Naval architects who reviewed the case stated plainly that leaving the Joyita for open water in any circumstance would have been the more dangerous choice. The life rafts were gone. The passengers chose the ocean over a ship that could not sink. That decision only makes sense if something on the ship was more terrifying than drowning. Then there were the bandages, found on deck, soaked through with blood, wrapped and discarded as if applied in haste. A doctor was among those aboard, a man named R.D. Parsons. Medical equipment recovered from the scene suggested emergency treatment had been performed before whatever happened happened. Someone had been badly injured, someone else had tried to help them, and then every person on that ship vanished before anyone could explain either fact. The blood was never typed. The bandages were never submitted to a formal forensic process. The colonial administration collected them, cataloged them loosely, and moved on. In 1955, in that corner of the Pacific, there was no pressure to do otherwise. The radio was found switched on and tuned to the international distress frequency, 2182 kilohertz. The channel monitored around the clock by maritime stations across the region. No distress call was ever received. Engineers who examined the set found it had been damaged, the cable connection faulty, likely for some time before departure. The Joyita left port with a broken radio she could receive on, but not transmit from. Her crew may not have known, or they knew and said nothing, because the schedule had already been delayed twice and the pressure to depart was mounting. Either way, when something went wrong out there, they had no voice. The darkness around them was total and the world could not hear them. The British colonial report was filed, recalled, revised, and reissued 3 times before a final version was approved for publication. Each iteration softened the language around negligence, removed specific references to the vessel's pre-departure mechanical faults, and quietly shifted emphasis toward the possibility of piracy, a conclusion that conveniently required no institutional accountability. The third and final version was the only one made available to the press. The first 2 were classified and held within the Western Pacific High Commission archives for decades. When researchers finally accessed redacted versions, they found entire paragraphs had been struck through. Not corrected, not updated, struck. Conclusions someone had reached and then decided should not exist. Whatever those early drafts said about what was known before the Joyita sailed, they decided the public version would say something different. That is not revision, that is burial. The MV Joyita was found on November 10, 1955, drifting 600 miles off course from her intended route between Samoa and the Tokelau Islands. 25 people had vanished. What remained told a story that defied every comfortable explanation. The refrigeration pipe had corroded and flooded the engine room, but that alone does not explain an abandonment. The cork lining in the hull made the vessel functionally unsinkable. Nobody needed to leave that ship. They chose to, or they were made to. The radio was tuned to the international distress frequency, but had a faulty connection, meaning any signal sent would have gone nowhere. The clock had stopped. The navigation lights were covered in tin foil, and on the deck, blood-stained bandages and a doctor's bag sat in open air, as if someone had been treated for an injury in a hurry and then disappeared mid-procedure. The British colonial authorities in Fiji opened an inquiry. That inquiry produced a report, then they rewrote it, then they rewrote it again. The final published version, the third version, stripped out specific witness testimony gathered from Tokelau Islanders who reported seeing the Joyita anchored near their atoll days after she was supposed to have departed. That testimony would have placed the vessel in a location she was never officially reported to have reached. It would have meant someone was lying about the timeline. The rewriting did not clarify the record. It buried it. When researchers later obtained fragments of the earlier drafts through colonial archive requests, the excised sections pointed toward a confrontation on or near the vessel, not a passive mechanical failure. The official conclusion remained, conveniently, inconclusive. What the colonial administration could not afford in 1955 was a maritime scandal in the Pacific that raised questions about who was moving what through those waters and who had the authority to make 25 people disappear without criminal consequence. The Joyita's owner was deeply indebted. The passenger manifest included figures with unclear affiliations. The cargo was never fully accounted for. 3 report rewrites do not happen because investigators found nothing. They happened because investigators found something they were ordered to erase. The ship that could not sink was supposed to take its secrets with it. It didn't. The ocean gave it back. What do you think happened on the Joyita? Drop your theory in the comments because some of you are going to piece together something the official record still refuses to say out loud. If this is the kind of history they tried to bury, subscribe, and make sure you never miss what comes next. Every week we dig up another story they hoped you'd never find.